Hey, this is Chaz Horn, and I want to talk about the 4 essential things that are needed to have a successful meeting with a prospect or customer. Now, I don't know about you, but I know myself, I have been in countless meetings where a salesperson just regurgitates lots and lots of information, and it turns the prospect off and customer and or customer. So, very important. First and foremost, well, obviously you're going to come to the meeting. You're going to be prepared. You're going to do your research on the company and on the individual, and I can cover that in a different meeting because it's very very important how you do this. But when you come to the meeting, as you're getting started and you have some small talk, bonding with them, you have 2 things that are right off the bat. First, you're going to come with your agenda, obviously. But this is where a lot of salespeople miss out. Ask about their agenda. John, is there something, before we get started today, is there something specific you'd like to discuss? A lot of times they'll say, you hear that, well, could you tell me a little bit about your company? If they ask you this, don't ramble on and on and on, okay? Like I said, don't regurgitate a lot of information. If they do this, turn it around and say, sure, I could do that. Could you be specific on some of the things you'd like to hear? Or is there something specific you'd like to hear about us? Because the last thing I want to do, John, is just ramble on like every other salesperson. And then when you hear about it, listen, and don't be like a salesperson that interrupts them and assumes they know what they're saying. Stop. Okay? Listen. And when they say it, say, I will definitely cover that in our discussion today. And one of the things I want to make sure before we get started is we talked about an hour for our meeting. Now, that's the duration. That's the other thing. So you have their agenda, the duration, and I'm going to talk about my agenda. So that'll be the number 3 thing. But make sure you confirm that the hour or whatever the time is that you're meeting with them is going to be okay. When you do that, then you can relax and go about your meeting and not have to worry that, man, am I going too long? Because you have a agreed upon time frame or duration for the meeting, okay? Now, if they're looking at their watch, then you you probably have some other problems, all right? So you have their agenda, you have the duration, and then you talk about, what, did they get that right? Their agenda, duration, and our agenda. And our agenda is simply whatever it might be. John, I was doing some research and I noticed that you have A, B, or C coming up. I had a couple questions I wanted to ask you about that. Obviously, I'm going to cover this thing that you asked me. But by the end of the meeting, would it be okay if we have an agreement on how we should proceed? We may come to the end of the meeting and you may need to talk to someone else, or I may need to get some information. But the last thing I want to do is end the meeting and say, hey, how about if I give you a call in a couple weeks? A couple weeks comes, I call you, you're busy, you call me. The last thing I want to do is waste your time or my time. So would it be okay to have an agreement on what we're going to do next and who's responsible for it, and we have a time and a date to follow up on? And by the way, that's called a clear future. You have a time, a date, an agreement, who's going to do it, or a time and date for the next meeting. So have those 4 essential things in your meeting, and it will be amazing what you can get done and accomplish, and that will shorten the sales cycle. And by the way, they'll see you as a true professional because you're providing purpose and direction for your conversation. All right? Most importantly, go rock this day.